I have to lock in on that part. All good to rock and roll? Perfect. How you guys doing today? We're going through kind of our total knee setup, and then also kind of showing you guys how instruments get utilized in the surgery, and then also going through kind of what are some key things to look for as they're coming down to you guys in deco. What are some of the hot spots to look for bone, blood, tissue, all of those things. For those who don't know me, I'm Tyler Stills with Zimmer Biomet. Next to me, I have Brad James. He's one of my teammates. We service kind of all the Ohio State accounts, whether it be Maine, same day, UHE, or Ohio State Dublin. We kind of touch each account in a different way. So with that being said, we're going through kind of our instrumentation, but I wanted to be noted that these kinds of checks and kind of the way you look at things and the way you understand a total knee procedure, that can be interpreted with every company's instrumentation. So whether it's a Medacta knee tray, a DePuy knee tray, or a Stryker knee tray, and all those in between. All of these things can kind of be applied to those instrumentation. With that being said, we'll kind of get started. So with the total knee, we have our bone model here. We have our femoral bone, and then we have our tibial bone. And so the big thing we talk about with a total knee is we're resurfacing the tibia, we're resurfacing the femur, and then that's going to create this articulation that you can kind of see between the two bones as they roll back and forth. With that being said, the first thing we do is expose the knee with our incision. We get our retractors in there, and then we go straight from there into our IM drill. So IM standing for intramedullary. We have this guy here. What they're doing is they're looking for a little spot in the kind of the center of this femur because they want to find the middle of this femoral shaft up here. So what they'll do is they'll kind of aim here. They're matching that angle with that bone, and they're coming through, and they're hitting it with that ring. They come out. You can already tell just by looking at this how much bone this drill alone keeps with it when it comes off. It's the only time we use this drill during the surgery. So immediately the tech is going to take this and toss it into either a bucket of water or saline, or they'll give it a quick wipe down with a lap. Right after that, we go into our first cut, which is our distal femoral cut. We have a jig that kind of looks like this. We call it like a long T-handle jig. Every company has one that's very similar to it. All it does is references that canal, just like with that drill that we just used. So we slide straight down into the femur. It goes against that bone, and then we have this guide sitting on top of the bone so we can make this cut like this. So Brad, if you want to hold that for me, I'll get some drills or some pins ready. A lot of times with these guides, it's a singular pin that goes through here. And so we're going to pin this just like that. And then we'll have the second pin come in. And we'll pin just like that. So once we have those two pins put in, we can take our jig and we can actually bring this all the way off. And so this will slide straight out. Once that piece is done, we can take this piece out. And then all we're left with is the actual cut block up there. And so with that being said, the next thing they'll do is cut. So I'm going to stand up here. My head will probably get cut off just a hair. But what we're doing is making sure that we're going to cut away this bone to replace with metal. And so we'll come through here. Yeah. Perfect. Come off with that. We'll come off with our cut guide and our pins. So once we've made that cut, we've now made our first cut on our femur. And the next thing they usually do after that is we size up the femur. And so some guys go a little out of order, but for the most part, if you go by technique, a lot of guys will then take this femur and they'll size it. So that way we know what size implant we're going to actually utilize. And so this sizer is a couple different pieces that all go together. There's some legs that pop into the bottom, and then there's normally this longer nose stylus on the top. And so what we do is we come through here and we reference off of the bottom of these femoral condyles. And what we're looking for is to bring this sizer up, and we can kind of turn this to the table. There's a small little like ball measurement that goes through here. And what we're doing is we're measuring how high up that goes. You can see it kind of move. And when we know where it's at, if we look right here, we're right at about a 7. And so we know that based off of our sizer and where we're at with our guide from our first cut, we're going to be about a 7 size femur, at least with Persona. With other guides or with other companies, it could be a different sizing, could go by numbers, it could go by letters, it could go by a bunch of different things. And so basically, once we're happy with the way that's sitting against the bone, we'll come through with our drill here and we'll mark out 2 holes that are going to be for our cut block. So that just pokes in and that just pokes in. I'd like to pause here and point out anything that we drill through, we're putting that drill through it into bone, and then we're pulling it back through that same hole. So with that being said, big places to look for bone and bioburden are going to be these 2 small holes here, and then also obviously the drill. But like when we run that drill through that hole and then pull it right back through, that is a key spot to check, especially with these smaller guides where bone can really stick in there after it goes through a hot cycle in the washer and the steam. It's always a good thing to double check those. Once we're happy with that, we can then take our cut block. So a lot of companies have a cut block that looks just like this. It's going to have 2 pegs. It's going to have some holes for some pins. Same thing with these holes, as we're drilling through them, as we're putting pins through them, good thing to double check as we pull back out with those items, because those are going to have bone and blood on them when they come out. And so those 2 pegs match up to those 2 drill holes that we just put in. That's going to pop on just like that. And at that point, we'll throw a couple more pins into that guide. So like I said, a lot of repetition with these pins going in and out of guides. And so it's a big thing to double check to make sure that we don't have any contaminations when this tray comes through the wash. So that pin goes in there. We have our other pin here. We'll pop that one in there. Boom. So that cut block's locked on there pretty good. At this point, they then make their next set of cuts, which we call it a 4-in-1 block because we're making 4 cuts. And the reason we make 4 cuts is because we're matching it up to the way that those femoral trials look. So we have a cut right here flat, a cut right here flat, and then we have these 2 diagonal cuts right here. So we're matching up the femur to cut exactly what we're replacing with our implant. So at that point, we'll take our saw. We're going to go ahead and make our cuts here. Steady hand, Brad. Slide it. Lost pin. Perfect. So we'll take our anterior cut here. Let's pop that pin back in there, actually. Make sure that's flush there. Perfect. So we'll pop this in here. Just wire drive everything instead. Perfect. And then we have our 2 anterior and chamfer, posterior and anterior chamfer cuts. And those ones are going to be, for the most part, a little smaller than our other cuts. It's all locked up. There. Just hold those moves. Put it over there. Yeah. We'll cut off the rest of that anterior cut here. Perfect. So then we'll come off with those pins and we'll come off with our cut guide, and we're left with some cuts that probably need to be osteotomed or rongered out of there because it's a very tight space in there, especially with all the tissue that we have in there. So what we'll do is we can flex that way up, and we'll just go ahead and take them off with our hand while we're here, just to kind of clean it up for the most part. Take this real quick. That'll do. So at that point, we're done with our femoral cut. But like I said, we ran those pins and those saws. And if I just show you the back of this cut block here, look at how much is just stuck not only in the little gaps that we have, but also just across the whole face of the guide.